edition of What's Eating Harlem. I'm Selena Hill. Harlem is one of the most hippest, hottest, and down-to-earth communities in the world, as well as being one of the most historic. We're going to carry you on a ride to all of the great food, art, entertainment, and history that Harlem has to offer. So let's get started. This entrepreneur has taken over 2 landmark restaurants, Minton's Playhouse and Cecil Steakhouse. See how he has created the ultimate Harlem experience. Harlem movie director Nadhege Ptah has a new film based on the landmark jazz club, Paris Blues.
Sign the contract. The money is yours and the property is ours.
Hell no. Paris Blues ain't for sale.
The Ralph Lauren Cancer Center is in Harlem to save lives in the Harlem community. All of that and more on What's Eating Harlem. Tonight we're here at the Cecil Steakhouse, and I'll speak to the owner about how he's remixed this Harlem landmark into one of the best steakhouses in the city. I'll also speak to their executive head chef and their special guest chef about the magic behind cooking up a world-class meal. Talking about your background, aren't you from Argentina?
Yes.
So tell us about your
I migrated to this country when I was 11 years old, and my family migrated to Forest Hills. Then after that, we went to Long Island. My family was already in the restaurant industry, so I actually went to California to get away from my brother because he's a chef, and he wanted me to be a chef, which, you know, I didn't think that I wanted, you know, that kind of life.
When and why did you decide to move to Harlem?
A friend of mine, which later on turned, you know, he was my partner, called me and he said that there was a good opportunity in Harlem. And at that time I was living in Long Island. This happened in 2002. So I said, where is that? So he told me. I came to East Harlem, you know, and which, you know, and then we opened a restaurant that is still there, Ricardo Steakhouse. So that was my first venture in adventure, I should say, in Harlem. Yeah. So at the beginning it was difficult because it was very different than, you know, what I was accustomed to. And back in the day, you know, Harlem was different than what it is now. You know, it has, you know, developed so much. So now let's talk about the Cecil Steakhouse. When and why you decided to invest in this establishment and turn it around? Well, to get to that point, I gotta tell you kind of like the journey. With Ricardo's, when we opened it, we needed a space for catering because, you know, it's a small space. So I got involved in, you know, in another business, which is the arts. That's how I got involved in the arts, because I took a space that later on we converted into a theater and an art gallery. So, but the original idea was for the space to be catering. So I fell in love with the arts so much. I started producing theater. I was one of the founders of the Harlem Shakespeare Festival. So it was a lot of fun to do the art. So it came to a point where I had to make a decision. Do I stay in the restaurant industry or do I do theater producing full time? And the arts won. You know, so I kind of like sold all my interest in all the restaurants, and I concentrated on being a theater producer and an art gallery owner, you know, for a bit. And I felt that it was the best decision that I could have made because I was very happy. Fall of 2016, found out that the Cecil was closing. And, that was really bad news, not just for the industry as a whole, but, for Harlem, because it's such a unique space. So when I was approached, with the opportunity, there was no way that I could say no. The Cecil and Minton's are first very unique places, historical places, landmark, spaces, but also because it's quite a challenge because of the size of it. It's huge, by any measures, of the industry. So when I was approached, it's something that I had to do because I felt that I had the responsibility because I knew that I could do it first and foremost. And unfortunately, since I was already almost 10 years in theater producing, and I did musicals, I did concerts at the Poets Den Theater, which that's the name of the theater. So I felt that it was the perfect fit for me. So you see, what makes Minton's and Cecil unique is that you need to have both skills. You need to be a restaurateur, but at the same time, you need to know about, producing music. And because if you are just one of those two things, it's going to be almost impossible to succeed. And it's such a place so rich in history. Well, the Cecil was one of the first hotels uptown. It was the Cecil Hotel. See this space where the Steakhouse is? It used to be the lobby of the Cecil Hotel. Now, in 1938, Henry Minton's opened Minton's Playhouse because he wanted to create a space where musicians could come and congregate themselves and play. Because back in that era, the musicians, they play, the Savoy Ballroom, they played at all of the other places, but they always play for the audiences. The music was geared towards the audience. Now, Minton's wanted to create a place where the musicians would play for the musicians. So it became a place where musicians would gather and just be free, play whatever they wanted, and that's how they started. They started a revolution. They created a new genre of jazz music, which is now we know it as bebop.
Let's talk about the changes, because even though you're preserving the legacy behind the Cecil Steakhouse, the Minton Playhouse, you've redecorated, you've reinvented it, and you've definitely put your own spin and touch on it. So let's talk about how you've changed it up aesthetically.
The size of it, the design of it is like the perfect space for a steakhouse. And being next to the most historic jazz club in the United States, or if not the world, it's a perfect fit, to do a steakhouse. But I needed to have a certain feel, and to me, the arts are very important. Visual arts, cultures, spoken word, everything. So anytime that I build a restaurant, I build it so in a way that the art is going to be just as important as the food, as the service. So it becomes part of it. The foundation for the changes that I started to make it was that I wanted to make it as artistic as possible. I wanted to create a space where I could hang, the artwork, where I can put the sculptures, where I could, so because that was going to be as important as the menu, the food menu that we have. When people walk in, I want them to feel like you're in a gallery. In a place where you'll be like, your eyes wander around like, oh wow, what is that? What is that?
Talk to us about some of the things on the menu. I mean, I know that you have empanadas, I know that you have like huevos. Can you talk about that?
Of course. Well, most traditional steakhouses, they have 6, 7 meat cuts, 1, 2 fish, and, a couple salads. I feel that even though it's a steakhouse, and we have about 10 cuts of steak, of beef, but it's important to give people variety, because especially nowadays, when you go out, if you go in a group, there's a lot of people who don't want to eat meat. Some people don't want to eat chicken. Some people want to eat pastas. And we can't forget about the vegetarians either. So when developing a menu, it's very important to keep that in mind. You have to be able to provide them with choices. So you can't just have one type of food. You have to be able to expand, the items that you put on a menu. As I always say, the developing of a menu, it's truly science, because it can make or break a restaurant. People call me and say like, okay, so what should we do? Should we eat at the Cecil or should we eat at Minton's? And I say like, if I was you, this is what I would do. I would come to the Steakhouse to have dinner, because you want to talk, you want to enjoy, your dinner, and then after, you go to Minton's for cocktails or dessert, and you can enjoy, amazing live music. And in that process, you're gonna enjoy also what we call a Goodfellas moment. Remember the movie Goodfellas? That you walk through the kitchen? Yep. So to move from Cecil to Minton's, you walk right through the kitchen. And people always like, oh wow, through the kitchen. You don't have to go outside, you go right through the kitchen, and then boom. And it creates that experience that you feel like Cecil, it's the new Harlem. And then you move, through the kitchen to Minton's, and you feel like you're transported to the 30s and the 40s, and it just, that's how it becomes an experience.
Paris Blues, the jazz and blues club that's in our community, that is founded by Samuel Hargreaves since 1969, November 1969. And I would often pass it like everyone else because it just looked like a shack and a bunch of elders just sitting all day having conversation. And when I was fundraising for my first film, he was one of the businesses that I stopped to help support my film, which he did. And I became intrigued by the story and how he acquired the space. And the more I learned about it and learned the rich history of Paris Blues, I said, you know what, I need to do a story because our elders are slowly ascending, leaving us on earth. And I think he's one of the last surviving people who have seen Harlem from 1969 till now. So he knows a lot and it's been through a lot, and I felt like I needed to capture that on film so that it can live forever than just us orally passing the story of what once used to exist. Nadhege Ptah. I am the writer, director, and actress of Paris Blues in Harlem. Thanks for coming.
Sign the contract. The money is yours and the property is ours.
Hell no. Paris Blues ain't for sale. Being a little down don't mean it's the end. It ain't the first time, and hell yes, we shall overcome.
Pop, you said you'd be open to this.
I said I would be open to a solution.
This is the solution.
Samuel Hargreaves, which is played by the late Charles Weldon, who recently transitioned unexpectedly, he plays Samuel Hargreaves. So Samuel Hargreaves is like the patriarch in this story who wants to continue the legacy and give it to his granddaughter, who I play by Paris. But Paris is a millennial who wants to, doesn't want the legacy and wants to do something different and doesn't want to have the burden and the pressure of sustaining this legacy and doesn't see the value of her grandfather holding on to something that's old and carrying on the old way. So there's this generational clash of where they place their values. And then we have the real estate agent, who is played by Michelle Baldwin, and she sees an opportunity to help save the space by convincing Paris to convince her grandfather to just take the mounds of cash.
Isn't it safer to save it? I mean, I'm representing for us and helping our people. Schwartz and Associates can assist before you go into foreclosure. This is our final offering.
She works for Schwartz and Associates, and she'll save the space, take the cash, and that's it. And Paris tries desperately to convince her grandfather, hey, we have this mounds of cash, and we're struggling financially. Just take the cash, and we can just say goodbye and move on to legacy on social media. That's her thing. That's the millennial. Let's take it differently. Let's just have it on cyberspace. He doesn't know cyberspace. He wants to hang in a spot with his friends that he's known for how many years, and the community that he's served, and that's where his value is human contact and building community. And so those are the characters that you'll be introduced by, and also Shirley, who's his manager, who's the manager who helps ground everything, and she's caught up in between Paris and her grandfather.
Miss Shirley, thank you so much for your assistance. Pop only listens to you.
I'm just the day manager. I'm not the mediator.
Please, Miss Shirley, 2 voices are better than one. Please help him. Miss Shirley, tell Pop it's better to make a
Shirley,
profit
tell
than
my
risk losing
grandbaby,
it.
you can't copy a
Miss Shirley,
place in
tell Pop
cyberspace.
And then you meet some other characters like the drunk man, the drunk woman, the people who make up Paris Blues, that come in and out. And then his overseer, Jim, which doesn't have much dialogue, but he says a lot. And he's the one he is the overseer. And he doesn't say a lot, but he observes a lot.
Is this a thing where you're going to always act in your movies like Spike Lee, stuff like that?
All right. So here's the thing. I admire what Spike Lee does, right? But where's the woman? Where's the woman who's doing something like Spike Lee? But unlike Spike Lee, I am an actress. Filmmaking came by necessity as a Black woman, and as also the limited roles that are there for us. So I took a hiatus, an 8-year hiatus, because I took a pregnant pause, had children, 3 children later, and I said, if I'm gonna come back, am I going to put my powers to allow somebody to open doors for me, or am I going to open the doors myself and create opportunities for people? So I decided to come back as a filmmaker, not just the actress waiting for the agent, to send me out, or the manager, but also creating the roles, because I did have the skill sets as a writer. And I started to learn the filmmaking process of putting it together. And I love storytelling, and I've told stories. My first artistic discipline is dance. So I started off dancing first, and then writing poetry, then writing, then acting. So I think filmmaking just felt naturally. It kind of covers everything. And so I said, I'm going to create these roles for myself as well as others and not wait. And so 2015, I started and managed to produce 3 films later. And this is my 3rd film. So am I moving on the trajectory like Spike Lee? I would say by default, I'm an actress. By necessity, I became a filmmaker to also show the range and not be trapped by doing a role that's not showing my range, and by people who are writing things who don't really write us in the 3-dimensional. And I think as African people of the diaspora, there's so many levels and there's so many stories that are not being told through our perspective, to show the range, to show the color, to show the beauty, to show the pain, to show the trauma. And I feel like it's just linear, and I want to contribute to showing other aspects and other angles that we are this too, So that's the reason why I became a filmmaker, as well as, yes, show my range as an actress, and get hired and not wait. Listen, I'll be 80 years old still waiting for an opportunity.
Hey, I'm Jen Jade, and I love What's Eating Harlem.
The mission of the Ralph Lauren Center is to correct and reduce the disparities in cancer incidence and outcomes among the underserved population that lives in Harlem and surrounding communities. We've known for many years that the likelihood of getting cancer is much higher among African Americans than in Caucasians, and that the death rates are higher than the same cancers in Caucasians. We really don't know why those differences exist. There are probably many factors. One is socioeconomic, access to care, resistance to screening and testing based on historic inequities in the past. Another might be genetic factors, and a third might be environmental factors. It's probably a mix of two, and they're scared, they're frightened, they may be intimidated by a large, big, cold institution. I think that was what was in mind.
That's all we have for now. I'm Selena Hill. See you uptown.
Yeah. Me and you taking flight on this electric ride. World sees us tonight. We're lightning bolts in the sky, flashing with thunder, and it's beautiful all over. Yeah. Let me feel vibrations going through my system. Send shockwaves to me.